Hello again, gamers and gamettes, and welcome to another episode of Not So Hardcore Gaming. I'm your host, Jeremy, and today, again, and I know I've said this many times, I'm doing something just a little bit different, and this isn't really going to become a frequent thing on the channel, but I'm going to be reviewing a movie. As by the title you can guess, I'm reviewing Free Guy. Now, I will preface this by saying this won't be much like other movie reviews you've seen. I'm not really much of a critic, generally. And on YouTube, I see a lot of people that will review a movie and they see problems with a movie that I don't frequently see myself, so it's sort of it is going to be a bit different to most others you would hear, as well as that, as the movie was released just under a month ago, there will be no spoilers if I can possibly help it. I'm a person who very much detests spoilers, and yeah, therefore I will do my best not to spoil really anything that happens. But the reason I wanted to review it as well is, if you haven't seen trailers or anything like that, the movie is based on a video game character who gains sentience, which is a wonderful concept, and I very much liked the idea of it as soon as I heard about it, and it's made better, by the fact that the main character is played by Ryan Reynolds. And obviously, most people like Ryan Reynolds. For me, and this is going to be a little bit controversial, so to speak, I even enjoyed his movie Green Lantern, where it seems nobody else did. But I enjoyed it. And obviously, later on when he became Deadpool, loved both those movies, loved the style of humor, and what I loved about it was he seems to have that same style of humor in real life. It's sort of like when he plays Deadpool, he's not that far away from just playing himself, so to speak. So, knowing that he played the main character in the movie was just another reason I was going to enjoy watching it, and I really thought I would right from the start. It looked quite spectacular. I loved the premise, loved the main actor, and whenever I go into a movie, I'm always optimistic, or always try to be optimistic. And in fact, in my entire time watching really most movies, there's been very few movies that I really have specifically not enjoyed, and I would usually enjoy ones that other people would not enjoy. So, as I said, really, there's not a hell of a lot of criticism that I would put against most movies, and there's very little for this one as well. But the other thing, this won't have quite as much order as other episodes. As it is such a different topic to talk about, it is more difficult to use the same style of recording that I would normally do, because it's on something completely different. Because you're not playing it, there's fewer different talking points, so to speak. So yeah, as I said, this will be a bit different, and I know the intro is long, but we'll get into it now as I can. So first of all, as I said before, the premise was really good. And the part of the movie that I did enjoy for this, it's not just like a video game life, which, closest comparison I could find of that would have been something like Wreck-It Ralph, where it follows video game characters. This blended the two worlds together, so you have the real life as well as the video game life, and it's based basically in current times, where you'll also have streamers and YouTubers, that sort of thing, which sort of brings it into the real world just that extra bit more. it sort of makes it feel a bit more real, so to speak, and as I said, more current. So the basic premise there, as I was playing, is there, and you've blended the two worlds where you've got real people interacting with the video game characters, and it even has, like, in media, when he starts to make a name for himself, basically, he becomes an internet sensation. As I said, like, really just the idea of blending the two worlds together was a very good one, and it was done quite well for the movie. You've got real people going into the game, communicating with him, and you've got, and basically this is one of my highlights for the film, you've got YouTubers such as Jacksepticeye, who's actually in the movie, and they talk about it. And yeah, it's brief enough, but again, that just adds that blending to the two different worlds for it. And that was another reason I was excited to watch this, is it had Jacksepticeye in it, which that just, to me, was very exciting. He's one of my biggest YouTubers that I'll watch, and it was such a cool idea to me, and it made it seem just that little bit more exciting for the movie itself. So that's just the starting part of it. Now, when you come to the visuals for this movie, this is always what's most important for movies, you know, aside from, like, script, that sort of thing. When you're watching a movie, script and writing is important, but that's not something I could personally talk about. But as a viewer, the visuals and the audio for it are very important, and this had to have had a big budget, and you get a lot of the epic stuff, a lot of explosions, a lot of gunfire, and because it's based in a video game world, you have all these special effects of players doing unreasonable things, like stunts like you would find in GTA, as well as lots of helicopter crashes, that sort of thing. There's a lot going on visually, and it's sort of chaotic, but it looks good. The explosions are very frequent and very destructive, exactly what you'd expect to see in a video game. And the sound, as you'd expect in any theatre, really is loud, but it fits. And what I found as well for this movie, that I think a lot of movies do make the mistake of, is when you'll be listening to them talking, sometimes the audio over the background is too loud that you can't hear them properly. And so you sort of, it just becomes difficult to hear what they're saying, or in some cases, the speaking is so soft that, you know, and this wouldn't apply if you're watching it in a cinema, but, you know, you'd have to make it louder just to hear what they're saying, but then the sound effects come in and blast your ears to hell. And I think, obviously, it could change when it comes out onto DVD, but it seemed like this was designed slightly better in that side of things, that the sounds were blended together better so you could distinguish their voices from the background noise, as well as, you know, getting the full effect of the sound effects that you come across. So visually and audio-wise, it's one of the cooler movies to get for the explosions. You know, the video game stuff for it is fantastical enough that you can think to yourself, this seems like a game I would play in real life, you know, which, again, is very important and done quite well for the movie. So it very much fits what you would want to see in a video game, while, as I've said, it has to be, you know, real people playing it, real special effects. But it sort of, you have that disconnect. You know, it looks real because it has to for the movie, but it's something you could imagine seeing in a video game. And one of the other really satisfying things I saw for the game itself is when you go to the real world, it will show you screens of what's happening inside the game, and in that view, it looks like a video game. So you get another blend there where in the real world, it looks like a video game, but once you go into the video game, it looks real for the movie to look better. So it has that, the two sides of it, which look satisfying, as well as I think just the idea behind it makes so much more sense. And if you were to see it any other way, it just wouldn't look right, if that makes sense. And as in terms of the audio, it all sounded quite good, and I think when you go into the real life as well, it does sound slightly different as well. So it's like the game is actually a game when you're outside of it, but when you're inside of it, it's real. Really quite well done. Now, one of the main reasons I like this movie, aside from, visually and audio aspect, it's a very funny movie. Now, I'm a guy who very much values humour, and as I said, that's one of the reasons I liked Ryan Reynolds as an actor and as a person, is he's a very comedic guy. And brief note for you, interesting fact, he and I share a birthday. Just thought I'd put it out there because I think that's pretty damn cool. But back onto what I was saying, the humour for this movie is very well done, in my opinion. I found I got a few really good, hearty chuckles. You get the few little sniggers at one-liners in there as well, but I got some really good, solid laughs out of it. It has some actors that you wouldn't expect to see it. I think it has... is his name Channing Tatum? I'm not good with names like that, but I believe he's in it for a brief part of the movie, and that's just a cool little detail that I didn't expect to see him in there. And so it made it a little bit more funny because it was a shock adjustment, and they're playing some of the strangest characters. So Channing Tatum actually plays a character within the video game, and then you see a disconnect of him, the person who's playing that character, and he is your stereotypical nerd. And that's the other thing that goes quite well with this movie, is the actors who play the video game characters having that disconnect for the people who play the players behind those video game characters. And that, I think, is where a lot of the comedy comes from. As I said, you've got something will happen in the game, and then you see the person reacting to it as it's happening. Like, there's a kiss shared in one of them, and in the game, it's the sweet music, everything going, and then she's just sitting there awkwardly. So that sort of stuff, it was done very, very well, in my opinion. And I think that's where this movie really has its strength in the most. I think that's what this movie does best, is the humour. So, again, it's lots of little laughs, and it's just enjoyable to watch, just from a purely comedic perspective. The other thing that I do quite like about it, you've got obviously a subplot. This game, it doesn't sort of just say, oh, the video game character suddenly gains sentience. It gives you an explanation behind it. Why did he suddenly awaken, so to speak? What caused that? And it goes into the real life as well. I can't give a hell of a lot away, because if I do, we would come into major spoiler territory, and as I said, I really don't feel like I should do that so close to the release. But as there are real world stakes in this, there's a whole different plot outside it than just inside the movie. And the basic themes for the actual real world stakes are, when you think about it, they can be quite dark, but again, it's done in a comedic way, so it doesn't end up being dark. It still gets the comedy there while giving you that sense of seriousness. I've really spoken quite a lot about it, and really I've just got to say a couple more of the actors, and I'm not great with names, and I know that I will likely mispronounce a few of them, but I think the movie was cast about as well as you could expect. The actors did very well in their role. Obviously, as I said, Ryan Reynolds, he is perfect for his character. You know, some of the lines he says, it's sort of, you get that witty side of him again, and there were even a few times where I thought to myself, I can bet you that was ad-libbed. You know, just because you get that authenticity behind it. Obviously, then you've got the characters outside of the game. They're nerdy, but not overly nerdy. Like, they are game designers, so you have to have that little bit of nerd, but they're not one of those trope nerds, which can get very annoying if your main character for a movie is one of the overly nerdy ones that just start to irritate you after a bit. Thankfully, they didn't go heavily into that, because when they did have a genuinely really nerdy guy, he was barely even a side character. He was just a small appearance in it, so it didn't become annoying by the end of it. You've got, for example, the bad guy in the movie by Taika Waititi. I probably buggered that name, but he played that role very, very well. His character, while being, you know, obviously the bad guy, he was funny to watch, and he's one of those lovable bad guys. And that, I think, is always very important for a comedic movie. You have to be able to really like the bad guy, and in this, even though obviously I didn't want to see him do well, I enjoyed the character because it was played well and because it fit the movie well. And I think he was also just very good in the role in general. So again, another place where it just fit, you know? And as I said, then the other bit that I liked about it, it had a few YouTubers like Pokimane, who I think is actually more a streamer, Laserbeam, I think, and as I said, the big man himself, Jacksepticeye. They actually acted for the movie, so it had them watching what's happening in the game and reacting to it. And another nice little detail I really enjoyed about it, when you get to the credits scene, and I remember I stayed to watch the credits until I saw Jacksepticeye's name. Don't know why I did, but I wanted to. And it had Jacksepticeye as the character name and his real name as, you know, him playing Jacksepticeye, saying that's a character, which, as it is, a really nice detail from an outward perspective for me. You know, that it's kind of like a fourth wall break in real life. Everybody knows him by Jacksepticeye, but it had his full name as playing that character, which he has to for his YouTube channel. He is playing a character throughout all of his YouTube videos, basically, to a certain extent. So again, a smaller detail, but one I really greatly appreciated. And yeah, as it having the blend between actual YouTubers, people who focus on video games, people who play the video games, as actually being part of the movie itself, to show that different perspective of, you know, when you're outside the video game and you're seeing the real stakes, where, you know, the video game character becomes well known and well loved, and it just becomes a worldwide sensation. Very, very well done for that. That's like most of what I think I have to say for the movie. As I said, it looked and sounded beautiful to me. It had characters, very recent characters, and itself did a lot. There was that physical humor, which, when overdone, can be bad, but I never really got the sense it was too overdone. Now we get to the last bit, which is something I've sort of toyed with it in my mind a little bit. After watching the movie, our friend on the channel, Blaze, pointed out, he said he felt like it dragged out a little bit towards the end, and at first I thought, well, I didn't really get that feeling, but looking back at it, I feel like it did just a little bit towards the end. It has towards a bit there, running across a bridge. That's as much as I will say for it. And it just really did drag it out for quite a bit. You know, the bridge is being destroyed, yada yada. And it felt like it went on a little bit too long. And then you have another bit towards the end where you've got two of the characters just staring at each other from across the street. And when I thought about it, I thought to myself, and I look back, I thought, yeah, that went on a bit too long. So towards the end, I do have to say, it did sort of drag out a touch. But for the rest of the movie, I was able to overlook that. And it was just a relatively minor thing towards the end, which, as I said originally, I didn't really think much of it, but yeah, no, looking back on it, it did drag out just a bit too long. But for me, it didn't take much away from the movie. Overall, I had a lot of fun watching this movie. The basic premise was one of the most interesting ones I've seen recently. And I think it did so much very well, and did so little wrong. This movie is still playing in cinemas, so if you are able to get to a cinema to watch it, I greatly recommend it. It was a wonderful watch for me to enjoy, and I genuinely think you'll be able to enjoy it too. And that's pretty much today's episode. As I said, this isn't going to be an ongoing thing, reviewing movies on this. It's just sort of not, I don't think it's really my cup of tea, and I don't want to be doing this a heck of a lot on a podcast centered around gaming. And the only reason I did decide to review it was it was a movie based on a video game, and that's the reason I've been talking about it. So we'll return again next week with a usual game review episode, and I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. It's been an interesting one, and I've gone a little bit out of my comfort zone for it, which is one thing I've liked to do lately, is sort of do something that I hadn't thought about doing previously. And originally I was thinking in my mind about just making an Instagram post about it, but I was given the advice to actually make a whole podcast episode on it, and I thought, yeah, that's not a bad idea. And here we are, right at the end of it. Again, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for joining me as always, and I will see you next week. And that's everything.